Many historians regard 1968 as the turning point for African Americans and the civil rights movement. When the dismantling of the Jim Crow segregation laws in 1965 didn't bring the equality and justice everyone hoped for, it was the young blacks that stepped up with renewed activism. The perseverance and organizational strength of the Black Power movement inspired and encouraged not only young African Americans, but whites, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, women, and the LGBTQ community. The counterculture revolution had begun. This is African American History is American History.
The convergence of worldwide social justice conditions made 1968 a perfect storm for protests. On January 30th, 1968, the Tet Offensive was launched. It was a major escalation by the forces of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese People's Army of Vietnam against the forces of the South Vietnamese Army of the Republic of Vietnam, the United States Armed Forces, and their allies. The impact of this brutal escalation, which was being presented nightly on network news stations here in America, sparked a broad opposition movement to the Vietnam War. Mass protest movements dominated by students were quickly growing all over the United States, as well as in London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, and Japan.
This is African American History is American History.
Do they know about Martin Luther King? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm only going to talk to you just for a minute or so this evening because I have some very sad news for all of you. Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and a desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks and white amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land, with an effort to understand compassion and love. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. And he once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. We can do well in this country. We will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past, but we will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It is not the end of lawlessness, and it's not the end of disorder. But the vast majority of white people and the vast majority of black people in this country want to live together, want to improve the quality of our life, and want justice for all human beings that abide in our land. And dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and say a prayer for our country and for our people. Thank you very much.
On April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, an assassin's bullet stole the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Waves of shock, grief, and later rage followed. Many journalists at the time wrote that Dr. King's death also marked the death of the civil rights movement. But they were wrong. It was resurrected stronger than ever. To put it in today's terms, you might call it Civil Rights 2.0. This is African American History is American History.
In the 29th Congressional District,
Jerry, I'm sorry we're going to have to interrupt you. To Ray Williams right now to Kennedy headquarters in the Ambassador Hotel.
Right, Bob, and here we have a situation where Senator Robert Kennedy has been shot. The man is now calling for a doctor. We don't know exactly who did the shooting, how it happened. The rumor we have is that he was in the midst of some hysterical teenagers. A shot rang out. There was a noise. No one knew at the time whether it was a balloon or just what. But the senator has been shot. Exactly what his condition is, we don't really know. However, our producer has gone over to check and see if he can find out anything. but there is complete pandemonium here at the embassy room at the Ambassador Hotel.
On June 5th, 1968, having just won the California primary, which put him well within reach of securing the Democratic presidential nomination, Senator Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. He was leaving the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles after addressing a large crowd of supporters when he was shot by a young Jordanian immigrant named Sirhan Sirhan. Sirhan later said that he assassinated Kennedy out of concern for the Palestinian cause and had felt betrayed by the senator's support for Israel during the Six-Day War in 1967.
Here in the States, Republican Richard Nixon ran against Democrat Hubert Humphrey at a time of protests, riots, a very unpopular war, racial unrest, and deadly police violence. Nixon, much like Donald Trump 47 years later, ran on the law and order ticket. Nixon called his target voters the silent majority. And just like Trump did in his 2016 presidential run, launched a campaign based on fear and division.
On the evening of August 28, 1968, Vietnam protesters at the Democratic Convention in Chicago were violently met by the Chicago Police Department. Reporters, photographers, bystanders, and the protesters themselves all described their actions as a police riot. As the anti-war protesters peacefully chanted, quote, "The whole world is watching," the Chicago police, under the direction of Mayor Richard Daley, proceeded to beat, tear gas, and push some of the protesters through plate glass windows. This was all broadcast live on national television. It would later be described by the Chicago Sun-Times as, quote, "the Battle of Michigan Avenue." By the time it was over, 100 protesters and 119 police officers were treated for injuries, and 600 protesters were arrested. This reminded people of an earlier protest in 1968 that turned into a bloodbath. On the evening of February 8, 1968, a civil rights protest in Orangeburg, South Carolina, turned deadly, with the death of 3 college students. The Orangeburg massacre, as it would later be called, predated the Kent State shootings. Approximately 200 peaceful protesters had previously demonstrated against racial segregation at a local bowling alley in South Carolina. 3 of the protesters, all African American males, were killed, and 28 other protesters were injured. This is African American History is American History.
1968 also saw women of all races marching and fighting back against the gender stereotypes that confined them only to the role of housewives. In August of 1968, New York Assemblywoman Shirley Anita Chisholm was elected that state's Democratic National Committee woman. Shirley Chisholm also ran for the U.S. House of Representatives in 1968. She won by an almost 2-to-1 margin, becoming not only the first black woman elected to Congress, but also the only woman in her 1968 freshman class. During her New York legislative career, Shirley Chisholm faced more gender discrimination than racial discrimination. That's why the staff in her congressional office was comprised of only women, with about half of them black. It will be 4 years, January 25, 1972, in Brooklyn, New York, to be exact, before she formally announced that she's running in the 1972 presidential election. And with that announcement, Shirley Chisholm becomes the first black major party candidate to run for the President of the United States.
At the medal awards ceremony for the men's 200-meter race during the 1968 Summer Olympic Games in Mexico City, black American athletes Tommy Smith, who took the gold, and John Carlos, the bronze, took a stand for civil rights by raising their black-gloved fists during the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Peter Norman, the Australian who took the silver medal, wore an American Human Rights Badge on the podium for support. The International Olympic Committee responded by banning Tommy Smith and John Carlos from the Olympic Games for life. Peter Norman's omission from Australia's Olympic team in 1972 was allegedly his punishment.
1968 saw increased government persecution aimed at the Black Panther Party. The party formed in 1966 and would reach its peak in 1970. The Black Panther Party's growth worried a dyed-in-the-wool racist like FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, who described the party as the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. Hoover developed and supervised an extensive counterintelligence program known as COINTELPRO. This covert federal surveillance program used unlawful tactics designed to undermine Panther leadership, incriminate and assassinate party members, discredit and criminalize the party, and drain organizational resources and manpower. The COINTELPRO operation ultimately backfired on Hoover. Instead of weakening the Black Panther Party, the FBI's killing and arresting of Panther members only served to increase the party's support among African Americans and many whites on the political left. They valued the Panthers as a powerful force that was opposed to segregation and the military draft. The Black Panther Party's mission was to make the world a better place for everybody. While Hoover relentlessly painted the Black Panther Party as subversive criminals, the Black community saw the party as a force for good. By the end of 1968, Black Panther Party founders Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale launched many social programs, including free breakfast for school children and community health clinics.
By December of 1968, an epidemic that began overseas in July had now become a pandemic and was hitting America hard. That's right, I said pandemic. It killed 100,000 Americans. And like the current COVID-19, this pandemic had its origins in China. But though racistly referred to as the Hong Kong or Mao flu, this pandemic never became a political issue. There were no shutdowns, no political battles over mask wearing, or protests by anti-vaxxers. Within 4 months of the pandemic, American microbiologist Maurice Hilleman and his team created a vaccine, and more than 9 million doses had been manufactured. In 1968, the phrase Southern Strategy was born. With the dismantling of the Jim Crow laws in the South, the Republican Party used fear and existing tensions to gain increased support with white Southern voters by appealing to their racism of Black Americans.
The GOP's Southern Strategy helped their candidate, Richard M. Nixon, win the presidency in 1969. It also pushed the Republican Party as a whole much further to the right.
And there you have it. Riots, mass shootings, protests, government surveillance, police harassment, racial violence, discrimination, voter suppression, a pandemic. It seems that when looking back at 1968 and comparing it to today, you can't help but say it's deja vu all over again. This has been African American History is American History. I'm Harlan Kearsley, and on behalf of everyone involved with African American History is American History, thank you for listening. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe. Once you do, you'll be notified as soon as new episodes are posted. Thanks again, and please stay safe. African American History is American History. Copyright H.C. Kearsley, 2026.